All right, I hope you did the exercise and got an idea about using the IDE, compiling and running the programs in an IDE, and also understood some basic Java operators behavior and functionality. In this chapter, we will go ahead using other operators. We will understand ternary operator, bitwise operator, and some special operators as well. And then we'll also discuss about operator precedence. So when you have multiple operators in one single line of code, what we generally call as an expression, how does Java look at it and how the operators precedence actually work in Java, and that's something which is very important, which we will discuss in this particular chapter. So please go ahead and understand these concepts which are very important. Let us look at other operators and operator precedence in Java. So we do have unary operators. A classic example to use unary operators could be something like, or let us say I want to represent a negative number to start with, say int I is equal to -5. So this is what you need to specify. So in this case, you could use minus as a prefix to the variable or a prefix to the respective value. So this is something which requires only one operand to perform an operation. So plus 25 minus 60. So this is very much possible. Similarly, you could also bring logical NOT where it inverts. For example, if you have, say, A is equal to true, B is equal to not A. So this is nothing but the not of true, which is false, or the other way around. So because Boolean is 0 or 1 only. Similarly, the increment and decrement is also referred to as unary operators, which we also discussed in the previous hands-on. Next is bitwise operators. So whenever you want to do some logical binary operations, you could use AND, OR, etc. And we do have bitwise XOR. So AND and OR are more frequently used in our day-to-day programming. And in addition to this, you have XOR, NOT, shift left, shift right, and shift right with zero fill. So these are some of the ways in which you could do binary arithmetic. Say, for example, shifting a bit from one location to another location changes its respective number, right? So the concept of shifting the binary, etc., is very much useful for low-level binary operations. So if you are writing a program which requires binary operations, you could use the bitwise operators. Next, we do have a conditional operator, also known as ternary operator. So what is that? So let's take an example here. So it is like you have an expression, and if that expression is true, then it would result in value A, or it will result in value B. So this is a simple example. So let us look at what is an expression. So an expression is nothing but a statement or a logic that you would have written which would result in true or false. For example, in the basic operators section, we saw logical operators. So A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20, A greater than B results in false. So A greater than B, if we put inside a parenthesis, it is referred to as an expression. So that's a very simple example. So let's take an example here as well. Int x is equal to 10, comma y is equal to 20. We have done this. Now int max. So I want to find max of these two integers. I could use a simple ternary operator or conditional operator where it basically brings the condition saying that x greater than y. So this is the condition. So internally it is using logical operator, right? And then when we put them inside a parenthesis, this results in true or false. And based on true, if it is true, then return x. If it is false, return y. So x is greater than y. If it is true, it should basically return x, because that is what I want. That's max of these two numbers is what I'm trying to compute in this example. So this is a very simple example to understand how you can write logic, and based on the expression you can decide what has to be returned. So that's a simple example of this ternary operator. So for very simple operations we can use, but for complex conditions, yes, we do have other control statements which we will discuss in the later chapters. Next, we do have some special operators, like we have object member access operator. So we will get introduced to classes and objects in detail in the next section. However, in the first section itself, we would have seen the concept of a rectangle class and rectangle dot something, employee dot set salary. So this is a simple example of accessing the member methods or member variables of a instance or an object, and this is where we use dot as an operator. So whatever you are seeing inside the parenthesis is what is important here. Then array elements access, we use square bracket. So we have already seen arrays, and in the arrays, when you want to access a particular array, we see that array of 0, array of 1, we use the square bracket. So for method invocation, we use parenthesis. We also use new operator for object creation. So for type conversion, we use the casting. Again, we use a parenthesis here as well. In addition to this, we do have another special type of operator called arrow operator, which we will be using it for lambda expressions on functional programming. These things are there in future courses. Alright, so this is about special operators. Then we do have another special type of an operator called instance of operator. What is that? It is basically representing the reference of an object. So it's an object reference operator which will return true if the object on the LHS, right, is the same class belonging to what you are comparing in the RHS. A classic example you could see here, I have a variable EMP which is of type employee. So I want to check if this variable is representing an employee class. So you could say EMP instance of employee. So which will return true if EMP belongs to an employee object type. If it is not an employee type, then it will return false. Similarly, you have a variable called salary, which could be a float. So float, you see here, it is capital F, which means it is float class, which is basically a wrapper object, which we already discussed in the prior chapters. So now salary is instance of float. I think there is a typo here, so please, there is no space here, please mind that. So salary instance of float, it should return true if salary is of type float. So how do you define this? For example, you would have defined this something like this. Okay, so we could say float salary is equal to say .0f, something like this. Okay, so now if you bring a condition something like this, all right, so this is an instance of float object. So that's a simple example which we could see the instance of operator coming into picture. Next, a very important concept, which is operator precedence. So when you have multiple operators coming in one single expression, what should get the highest precedence? Basically performed or computed first. So this is a very important element that we need to understand. So let's look at the precedences that we have from highest to lowest. So let me just bring it out here. All right, so now there are various operators, so it comes from lowest to highest. Okay, so the order of precedence would come into picture, and then here parenthesis raise the precedence of operation. So whenever you require a particular result which needs to be executed first, then you put that in parenthesis. So putting in something in parenthesis will actually group the respective elements in your program, and that gets the highest precedence for execution. So this is a very important thing that we need to consider. So parenthesis is the first element which would be looked at in an expression. So if an expression has multiple parentheses, so it will look at first executing the innermost parenthesis and then next level. So that is how it comes. You learn all these things when we actually get into the programming world and do write some application level programs, because so far we've been running and trying to understand the basic core concepts, and once we get into some problem solving projects, it will be more easier for people to understand this, and we will apply these concepts in those places. All right, so now let us look at unary operators, which is the next thing. So remember, a unary operator can have a plus plus as a postfix or a prefix as well. So if it is plus a plus plus, for example, which is postfix, then that would be the highest precedence, and plus plus is there, that would be the next level. So this is the simple order. I hope you can basically look at this. So then you have, after this comes the complement operator, then we have not operator, you have plus, minus, typecast. So there are different unary operators which would basically be coming into picture. Next comes multiplication operators or multiplicative operators. So inside the multiplicative operators, multiplication star is the first precedence, then comes division, then comes modulus. So if you have a star b slash c, something like this, then a star b will be computed first, and then slash b, c would come into picture. In case you want to change the order of operation, then you have to include them inside the parentheses. So this is a very simple example. In the hands-on exercises, we will talk about using these concepts more effectively, where it will be more easier to understand. Then we do have additive operators coming into picture, a plus b, c, blah blah blah, then shift operators, and then we have relational operators coming into picture. So after relational operators, we do have equality operators, where it just checks if two elements are same, if a equal to b, because all these things are useful in writing expressions, and also a not equal to b. So this is the next level of precedence that would come into picture. Then comes bitwise operators. We already discussed all these operators. All right, then at last we do have ternary and assignment. Assignment is just the top, the least, because a is equal to 10. If you say that is the last thing, so a becomes 10, or if a is equal to c plus b or something like that, if it is there. So c plus b first gets computed, and the last thing that would come into picture is assigning to a, for example. So that's something which is there. And then the arrow operator as well, which would be the least precedence in Java. So these are some of the operators which are there, and we discussed about the operator precedence here from highest to lowest, which is very much important. So in the next chapter, so now with this we will go into the next level of how to use these statements in Java and understand the basic set of statements for controlling the logic flow in a Java program.